On January 14, 2008, there was another tragic accident at Texas City Refinery. This was the third fatality at the refinery since the March 2005 explosion. A BP supervisor, Mr. Joseph Gracia, was fatally injured when the top of a large steel filter housing suddenly blew off in the refinery's ultra-cracker unit.
At BP Texas City that would allow something like this to occur and that would allow 478 leaks, spills, releases, or emissions. And we're not talking about those things stopping in March of 2005. Indeed, there has been no change with regard to leaks, spills, and releases at BP Texas City since 15 people were killed in March of 2005. Another issue that there is at that plant, which was an issue here, which is again why we're very happy that the Chemical Safety Board and very encouraged that they're down here in Texas and Texas City, is that there have been many times, you'll harken back to April of 2007, when 100 people went to the hospital for being exposed to a chemical. And BP said to the public and to all of us that nothing was released and nothing was spilled. Recall that in this very incident, BP also made that statement originally when Mr. Gracia was killed. And but for the fact that the Chemical Safety Board would look into this and get involved, there would not be this investigation. 478. And that's confirmed leaks, spills, or releases. There's been twice that many odor complaints from the Galveston County Health District. And all this is public information that you folks can go find. It's out there. We've done an extensive investigation about the numbers of leaks, spills, releases, or emissions, and it happens on a far too frequent basis at BP Texas City. And that's why I hope that perhaps this investigation may lead to a plant-wide investigation with regard to physical integrity and the physical plant out there. That's our hope.
Thank you all for coming to this news conference of the United States Chemical Safety Board, the CSB. I'm Daniel Horowitz, the Director of Public Affairs for the board.
I guess top level, is the plant even safe to operate in your opinion? Or are you willing to go quite
well? I'm not going to say. I think that an expert like Don should be looking at the plant. Wide. I really believe that. You can just look at, that's just one picture, but we have hundreds of pictures from that day. And you can look at the bolts and see that those bolts are the same bolts that were there when that thing was first put into action. So, and that unit was indeed damaged from the original explosion. I represented probably 55 clients from that ultra-cracker unit from the original explosion. Which is why that unit didn't come back online until 2007. And why these filtration units were not, they've only recently attempted to bring those online. And that's a long time. So, okay, thank you.
There's significant pressure in there that, to be honest with you, design limits of the bolts. But we're certainly going to look at these bolts to see if they play a role.
Are you done with your physical investigation?
We're wrapping up this week our field investigation, which is the examination of equipment on the site. We've gathered a lot of, like all the bolts you see them attached are going to be removed for physical examination, how they fit with corrosion.
And throughout your investigation, will this piece of equipment remain unused?
That's my next question.
It will remain unused until we release it, in terms of we've got all our measurements and things in the same way that we had. So how we do our investigation is we kind of preserve a larger area with documents, electronic data, a lot of information, and then we sort of, in terms of the actual area within the plant, we release areas as we finished our examination, release them back to the company, which is documented in in a written format.
Don,
So-
what
so-
are we
so-
looking at?
So they will not be able to put a lid back on and start this back up until you say so.
It's a
if
multi-party
they were gonna
agreement
start
that
this
we
one.
all agreed that this is preserved
That's
until
preserved.
all the parties agree.
Okay.
To
But
release
essentially,
it.
you don't have to complete your final conclusion. You just get your physical evidence and say, okay, now you can clean it
Yeah,
up.
typically we don't actually ever ourselves permanently, take possession of any piece of equipment. We take possession of pieces of equipment from time to time to transport it to a lab to get it tested or examined. But we don't actually take possession or seize equipment other than to examine it.
Hey, Don, there was a tank identical to that about 10 feet away. Was that being pressurized as well at the same time?
Yeah, you can see it over there. That's another filter that was actually online at the time.
So it obviously performed well under pressure.
Yeah, we're actually examining it as sort of an exemplar and comparing it to this one, and also gathering samples. We're collecting scrapings from the walls of the vessel as well as from the lid, and we're also getting samples from the vessel that was in operation at the time, comparing the two.
Have you
But
noticed
are the
any
two-
significant differences between the two?
Are there?
We haven't opened that's actually occurring this morning. One of our investigators is out doing it this morning.
Do they serve the same purpose? Are they twins?
Yeah, they're operated in parallel, and one is in operation at any given time while the other's in standby. So this filter vessel is run until it either loses flow or it has what's called a high differential pressure across the vessel, which indicates that the filters are plugging. And typically when the differential pressure reached 20 pounds, then you would switch to the other filter and then perform a lockout tagout procedure on this filter so that it could be opened and the filters removed, and have to safely remove the contents of this vessel, so you could open it, change these filter elements, and then it would be returned to service and kept in standby until the other filter, in this case this is the south filter, the south, and the one that's in the picture is the north filter. And this filter would, it's called 118LA, it would be in standby until the other filter had a high differential pressure, and then you'd switch back.
What's supposed to happen if there's too much pressure in the system? I'm assuming alarms are supposed to ring, and I'm assuming that there'd be some measurement reading somewhere. Is that correct?
We're looking at the alarm data. In terms of an overpressure, there was a relief valve. This is the piping here that goes up to a relief valve. And we're looking at the condition of the valving related to that. We're going to examine the relief valve. But just as a general proposition, relief valves are designed for overpressure, which in this case is about this maximum allowing working capacity of this filter is 225 pounds. 225 pounds. And so that would be typically the set point.
Per square inch, PSI.
Yeah, PSIG, pounds per square inch gauge. Yeah.